Hi Year 6 and welcome to Wednesday's reading lesson. We're continuing our theme of poetry and we're continuing with the same poem, Ozymandias. So let's recap on the poem. I met a traveller from an antique land who said, "Two vast and trunkless legs of stone stand in the desert. Near them on the sand, half sunk, a shattered visage lies." So remember, visage means a face. A shattered visage lies, whose frown and wrinkled lip and sneer of cold command tell that its sculpture well those passions read. So remember, yesterday we talked about how this meant that the visage, the face on the sand, is frowning, it's got a wrinkled lip, it's got a sneer of cold command. So a sneer is really not a nice describing word. So, and command means he tells people what to do. So this frown tells us that the sculpture, the man who made it, read the expressions on the face of the person whose sculpture it was about, that we know is Ozymandias. So he's read his face well, and he's made a replica of it. And that this visage, these expressions, which yet survive, stamped on these lifeless things. Stamped is obviously, again, another meaning of replica. So which yet survive, these expressions are stamped on the lifeless sculpture. The hand that mocked them, so that's the sculpture's hand. So the hand that mocked them, the hand that replicated these features, and the heart that fed. And the heart is the heart of Ozymandias that fed the expressions on his face. And on the pedestals underneath the sculpture, these words appear. My name is Ozymandias, King of Kings. Look on my works, ye mighty, and despair. So he's saying, people, look at my sculpture, look at me. I am mighty, despair. Nothing besides remains round the decay. So that's how the sculpture is found, in decay. It's ruined, it's broken down. Of that colossal wreck. So now it's a huge wreck. Boundless and bare is where it is. So it's bare, it's the desert, there's nothing there. The lone and level sands stretch far away. So now this sculpture, which was made for people to look on, is now on its own, surrounded by nothing. So that's basically what the poem is about. So if we look at this question, who was being mocked and fed? Think about what I've just said, pause the video, answer the question, and then come back to discuss the answer. So the answer to that one is Ozymandias was the one being mocked. He was being replicated, and his expressions were being fed. He was feeding the expressions to the sculpture. So it was Ozymandias. How might they have been mocked? So how might they have been mocked? Think about the text as well. Pause the video and then come back to discuss the answer. So how might they have been mocked? So let's think about what's been mocked. So it's here it says the hand that mocked them, and we're talking about his frown, his wrinkled lip, his face, his expression of sneer and cold command. So how might they have been mocked? They have been mocked by being exactly as they were on the person. They have been, I don't want to use the word replicated again, copied exactly as they were. So the next part of the question, why does the author use hand then heart? Pause the video, have a think about this, and then join us to discuss the answer. So what did you put, Year 6? Why do you think the author uses hand and then heart? So my opinion on this, my interpretation of this, is that a heart is more of an emotional thing. So the hand is how it was made, how it was copied, the hand of the sculpture, and the heart is the heart of Ozymandias. So it's of more importance, really, that he was given the expression so the sculpture could copy them perfectly. What did you put for that one? So the last one, what does it tell you that Ozymandias both mocked and fed them? So it's not Ozymandias that's doing the mocking, it's the sculpture. So have a think, pause the video, and then come back to discuss the answer. So the answer to that question is we can take it a bit literally as well if we look further into the poem. We know what kind of man Ozymandias was from his sneer of cold command. Look at me, I'm mighty and you despair. He thinks King of Kings, he thinks he's better than everybody. So he could be mocking the people. We can take it literally that he's teasing them, he's calling them and he could feed them. Does that mean give them food, or does that mean feed them all this about himself, feed them tales about himself? So there are different ways we can interpret this question. What did you think? There's no right or wrong answer for this. It's your interpretation of the poem. So we've kind of discussed this a bit in yesterday and today's lesson. I want you to think about what these lines tell us about Ozymandias. My name is Ozymandias, King of Kings. Think about what the lines tell you about him, and what is your impression from Ozymandias from these lines, given what you've already read and what we've discussed. There is no right or wrong answer to this, but use evidence from the text. Remember, point, evidence, explanation to get all full marks for the question. Pause the video, give us your answer, and then join us back to discuss. So again, there's no right or wrong answer for this. It is your opinion. You've just had to have got the evidence from the text and then give an example. So something like this. So these lines tell me that Ozymandias thinks he is better than everyone. I get this impression because he says King of Kings, and a king is already really important. If you're king of all kings, then you're more than important. What impression do you get from these lines? So I get the impression that Ozymandias thinks he's better than everybody else. I can back this up with another line in the text that's ye mighty in despair. Check your answer, make sure you've given a point and you've backed it up with evidence from the text. Okay, a few questions here. What works might Ozymandias be challenging people to look upon? Think about what the sculpture's made. What is it? Who is he asking to do so? Why might they despair? Answer that bit first and then unpause and join us for the rest of the question. Okay, so you should have answered these first three questions. So what works might Ozymandias be challenging people to look up to? It's the sculpture of himself. He wants people to look up as high as they can at this massive sculpture of himself. Who is he asking? He's asking his people. So not just his servants. If he's the king, then he has an empire. So it's all the people in that empire. Why might they despair? So let's think about it. We know that he might not be a very nice king. We know he thinks he's better than himself. They might be despairing just by thinking, why do we have to do this? We know you're the king. There's no need for that. They might despair at the way he looks upon himself. So time for the last bit of the question. Does this change your view on Ozymandias? So what kind of king did you think he was in the first place? And do these, look on my works, ye mighty in despair, do these words change your opinion of him? Again, there's no right or wrong answer. This is your opinion. I want you to say what you first thought and what you does it change your view and what you think now. So 3 parts to your answer. Pause the video, answer your question, and then join us for the next question. Okay, so true or false, the statue of Ozymandias is in the middle of the city. Pause the video, what do you think? Is it true or false? You've seen the animation. We know that if we look at the text, we can get evidence, lone and level, boundless and bare. So think about where it is and how you're going to answer that question. Great, now you've answered that. Is it in the middle of a city? No, it's in the middle of a desert. There's nothing around, it's bare. Why do you think the author chose to use the word decay here? So think about the meaning of decay, and why didn't the author use another word like ruin, broken down? Have a think, and think about the impact that word has on the poem and the sentence. Pause the video, unpause when you've wrote your answer. So when we think of the word decay, to put it in another context like tooth decay, if we get tooth decay, it means we're not looking after it properly, we're not caring for our teeth properly. So the word decay means here, instead of just being the statue ruined, it means that no one's looked after it, no one's cared for it, no one's bothered for it, and it's kind of rotted away a little bit. So it's showing us that the people haven't looked after it. They didn't really care once they didn't have to. Once they were made not to look up at that, once they didn't have to, they didn't really care about this statue anymore. So the last question for today's lesson about this poem is what literary device is used here? Boundless and bare. lone and level, sands stretch. Okay, so think about figurative language. Think about Writer's Toolkit. What literary device is used here? Pause the video and then unpause for the answer. And the answer is alliteration. We've got boundless and bare, lone and level. So it's the words start with the same sound. Why do you think the author chose the adjectives he did here? So boundless, bare, lone, level. Lone and level, far away. Pause the video, have a think, and then join us to discuss this final question. Fantastic. So all through the poem, it's talked about this king of kings with lots of people that he wants to look up to him. And now he's left in the middle of nowhere with no one. So I think the author chose to use these adjectives here to show how alone this statue actually is and how not many people will get to see it anymore. So it's very different to how Ozymandias wanted it when he had his sculpture made. Right, Year 6, I know these last couple of lessons have been really tricky because this is a difficult poem to understand, but hopefully it's helped you to understand how to read poetry a little bit better, and hopefully now we've got to the end of the lessons, you understand what this poem would be about. To further your understanding, if you wanted to, you could show this poem to a grown-up and try and explain to them what the adult is about, or see if they can guess before you explain, just as an extra little challenge. Okay, see you tomorrow. Bye.